You wake up, but not because you want to. There's no gentle alarm clock, no birds chirping outside your window, no satin curtains fluttering with filtered sunlight. There is, however, a sharp pain in your hip, because the straw you're lying on has rotted and shifted in the night. Your bedding consists of hay, dirt, and something suspiciously sticky that you're hoping is just spilled gruel from yesterday. Spoiler, it's not. You slept on the floor because everyone sleeps on the floor. You share this floor with your family, your in-laws, the family pig, and a rooster that doesn't understand time but feels the need to scream anyway. Welcome to the start of your medieval day. You're a peasant. There's no other version of this story. If you were nobility, someone would have written about you already. You're part of the 90% of the population whose existence will never be recorded in any chronicle, scroll, or song. You're not destined for greatness. You're destined for the latrine pit behind the barley field. Your hut is not quaint. It's not rustic. It's a rectangle made of mud, wattle, and whatever God decided not to blow over in last week's storm. There are no windows, just holes. No fireplace, just a hole in the roof that doesn't ventilate smoke so much as trap it in swirling layers of eye-watering haze. It smells like ash, mildew, damp cloth, and desperation. The bedroom is just a corner. The kitchen is another corner. The toilet is wherever no one is currently standing. You stand up, slowly. Every joint protests. You're 27, but you feel 83. Medieval peasant aging is aggressive. Years are not kind to you. They tackle you like a bear. You probably have rickets, scurvy, or something charmingly named the King's Evil, which is just tuberculosis with marketing. Your back hurts from threshing wheat all day yesterday. Your legs hurt from walking 5 miles barefoot. Your brain hurts from the realization that today is identical to yesterday, and tomorrow will be worse. There is no privacy. There is no solitude. Your children are watching you. One of them is coughing and has been for 3 weeks. You tell yourself it's nothing. You lie. You notice your wife is already up. She's been up for hours. She didn't sleep last night. She was tending to the cow, who was constipated and then explosive. There is cow dung everywhere. It's on her. It's on you. It's on the only shirt you own, which you folded carefully last night, but which the rooster decided to use as a nest. You mutter something. Not a curse those get you fined or worse if overheard, but something close. Your neighbor snores on the other side of the thin wall. His snore is wet and phlegmy. He hasn't brushed his teeth since birth. No one has. Toothbrushes don't exist yet, and toothpaste is a lie from the future. You chew mint leaves if you're lucky. If you're not, you chew willow bark and pretend it helps. The rooster crows again. You consider strangling it. You won't. It's not your rooster. It's the Lord's. Killing it is theft, and theft is punishable by mutilation. The rooster keeps crowing. You sigh and start the day. There's no breakfast waiting for you. No eggs, no bacon, no coffee. There's some porridge left in a clay pot, hardened at the edges, sour in the middle. It's not good. It's not supposed to be. It's fuel, not flavor. You eat it with your fingers. Spoons are for the rich, or for church feasts when everyone pretends to be civilized. You burn your tongue on the sour clump of barley mush and instantly regret it. Again. Outside, it's cold, always cold, or muddy, or both. You pull on your tunic, which was never warm to begin with. It's made of coarse wool, unlined, unwashed. It itches. So does your skin. Probably fleas, probably lice, almost definitely both. You have not known a single moment of physical comfort since birth. Your shoes, if you're lucky, are made of cracked leather and stuffed with straw. If you're not lucky, and you usually aren't, you wrap your feet in old cloth and hope you don't step on something sharp. You will. You always do. Your mother-in-law is in the corner spinning wool. She looks at you like she regrets everything about your existence. She does. She blames you for everything, including the blight, the taxes, and the death of her fourth son, who was carried off by fever 2 winters ago. You weren't even married to her daughter back then. It doesn't matter. She blames you anyway. You step outside, and the world assaults you. The wind is sharp. It cuts through your layers like a knife through porridge. The sky is grey. It always is. You don't remember the last time you saw blue. The fields stretch out ahead of you like an endless punishment. You will be working them today, and tomorrow, and the day after, until you die, or until the next raid, or plague, or conscription. You relieve yourself behind a tree. There's no toilet paper. There's no toilet. You use leaves. You hope they're not poisonous. You hope you grabbed the right ones this time. Last time it was nettles. You still remember. You still weep. A bell rings in the distance. Church. Again. Always church. It doesn't matter if you believe or not. You go. Because not going means questions. Questions mean trouble. Trouble means the stocks, or fines, or worse. You trudge to the church with your head down. You pray because you're told to, not because you understand. Latin fills the air. You understand none of it. But you nod. You kneel. You repeat the parts you've memorized phonetically. You think of food. You think of warmth. You think of not thinking. The service ends. You shuffle back to your hovel, already exhausted, and it's not even mid-morning. The Lord's steward is waiting. He wants your taxes, in grain, in eggs, in the concept of suffering. You hand over the grain you ground yesterday, the best portion of it. He sneers at you, says, "It's not enough. It's never enough." You apologize. He laughs. You bow your head. He leaves with your food. Your children cry. You tell them to hush. They won't. They're hungry. So are you. You look around your home. You look at the broken thatch, the crooked beams, the hole where the rat got in. You look at your family. You look at your calloused hands. You look at the sky. It offers nothing. And yet somehow, impossibly, this is the easiest part of the day. You are hungry. Not in the modern sense of skipping a snack or pretending to do intermittent fasting because a wellness blog told you it builds discipline. Number. You are medieval hungry, which means the body has already started digesting itself in small, angry increments, and your stomach has taken up percussion as a full-time profession. You wake up with this feeling every day. You will go to sleep with it again. There is no relief. There is only the concept of food and the cruel physical reminder that your body needs it, but the universe has other plans. Your breakfast awaits, if you can call it that. It is not a spread. There is no table, no cutlery, no chairs, no Instagram-worthy plates, just a reused clay bowl with a small lump of what you optimistically refer to as porridge, though fermented beige disappointment would be more honest. The porridge is made of barley or oats if you're lucky, sometimes rye, sometimes just boiling water with anything that didn't scream when dropped in. There is no sugar, no milk, no spice. The medieval spice rack is imaginary, unless you are rich, royal, or a corrupt merchant with a shipping connection. You are none of these. The best you can hope for is a hint of salt, assuming salt wasn't taxed out of your life last week. It was. You eat with your fingers because spoons are a luxury, and your communal wooden one was burned for firewood 2 winters ago during a minor family crisis, involving frostbite and despair. The porridge is cold. If it's warm, it's only because the bowl was left near the hearth overnight and someone urinated on it by mistake. You don't ask. You eat quickly because hunger always wins. You chew the same bite 15 times, not because you're savoring it, but because it refuses to dissolve. The grain is undercooked, overboiled, and somehow still crunchy. You find a small rock. You find a hair. You keep going. Everyone else in the hovel is doing the same thing. You don't talk during breakfast. There's nothing to say. The sun is barely up, and the day's disappointments haven't even had time to form. Your neighbor brings over a hard loaf of bread as a generous gesture. You thank him, which is how you know you've lost all dignity, thanking someone for a weaponized carbohydrate. The bread is yesterday's, maybe last week's. The exterior is sharp enough to wound. The interior is soft like a brick. You tear it slowly, deliberately, and dip it in water to soften it, which works about as well as dipping a stone in hope. The bread contains weevils. You see them. They see you. You both ignore each other. At this point, they might be your only source of protein. You bite into the bread and chip a tooth. You pretend you didn't. Dental care isn't an option, and neither is grief. Across the village, someone else is preparing a nobleman's breakfast. This means cheese. You do not have cheese. Cheese is for the church, the Lord, and the celebration of saints whose names you can't pronounce. If you do get cheese, it's hard, cracked, and smells like sin. But today you have no cheese. You have gruel, which is just thinner porridge pretending to be soup. It tastes like history, bitter, grey, and full of regret. On special days, someone might trade you a small piece of dried fish. The word fresh does not exist in your vocabulary. This fish has been salted beyond recognition, stored in a sack that once carried manure, and left hanging above the smoke pit for a month. The result is something that vaguely resembles a fish in outline, but has the consistency of cured leather and the flavor of oceanic revenge. You chew it anyway. You always chew it, because the alternative is nothing, and nothing is always waiting. Eggs are rare. Chickens are valuable. You do not eat your hen's eggs unless you are sick, desperate, or feeling uncharacteristically reckless. Killing a hen for meat is even riskier. You need that bird for eggs, for trade, and for pretending that life isn't a closed system of starvation. But sometimes, just sometimes, someone drops an egg. It cracks. You slurp it raw off the floor. You don't look at anyone. They don't look at you. This is how community works. Milk is possible, though mostly thin and sour. You drink it quickly, or it turns. Sometimes you churn it into butter, if you have the time, the strength, and the patience to beat a liquid until it gives up and turns semi-solid. The butter is a greyish yellow. It spreads like clay and tastes faintly of regret. But it is fat, and fat means energy, and energy means not dying, yet. On very rare occasions, you might find honey, a spoonful, a smear. It is currency. It is medicine. It is everything you are not allowed to enjoy. If you find it, you hide it, not from your enemies, but from your friends. Because in the medieval world, friends are just people you haven't fought over calories with. Breakfast ends not when you're full, because that never happens, but when the food is gone. You stare into your bowl, scrape the last hardened residue with your fingernail, and lick it clean. Then you hand it to someone else who does the same. There is no soap. There is no running water. Hygiene is performative. Your stomach grumbles again. You ignore it. This is not a betrayal of your body. This is tradition. Generations of malnutrition have prepared you for this. Your parents ate this way. Their parents starved with more dignity. You carry on the legacy. There are rumors of breakfast in castles. White bread, eggs with herbs, bacon, wine. You think about it, but only briefly. That world is not your world. That food is not your food. It exists to remind you of your place, your station, your expendability. You do not rebel. You swallow, not just the porridge, but the feeling that this is how it will always be. You pack the remaining crust of your bread into a scrap of cloth. It will be your lunch, or your dinner, or a symbol of future disappointment. You don't know yet. You'll decide when the hunger comes again. It always does. You rise slowly. Your limbs creak. Not from age, but from work. You take one last look at the bowl. It is empty, like your soul, like your prospects. You hand it to your child, who licks it again out of habit. You don't stop them. That's more nutrition than they'll get for hours. Outside, the fields wait. The plough waits. Misery waits. But for now, the worst part is behind you. Breakfast is over. Let us now discuss the concept of cleanliness, or rather, the absence of it. You, medieval peasant, are not clean. You will not be clean. You were not born clean. You will not die clean. Hygiene is not a goal. It is not a custom. It is not even an illusion. It is, at best, a distant rumor carried by monks who accidentally touched Greek manuscripts. You stink. Everyone stinks. The stink is democratic. It transcends class, creed, and country. The noble stinks in velvet. The priest stinks beneath his cassock. You stink barefoot in a tunic stiff with body grease. You do not notice. Not anymore. Your nose gave up 2 winters ago. Let us begin with the most optimistic question. How do you bathe? The answer is, you don't. Not regularly. Not voluntarily. Not seasonally. Bathing is rare, cumbersome, and, depending on who's watching, morally questionable. Water is not clean. Rivers are latrines. Wells are for drinking. Rain is unreliable. Heating water takes wood, and wood is fuel, and fuel is survival. No one burns survival just to smell slightly less like compost. If you do bathe, it is because someone made you. The church says, cleanliness can tempt vanity, and vanity leads to sin, and sin leads to eternal damnation. Better to be holy and foul than fragrant and damned. So, instead of bathing, you mask. With herbs, with smoke, with prayer. You rub rosemary on your wrists. You chew mint to confuse your breath. You walk through smokehouses and hope the scent of salted meat will overwrite your own decay. It never does. Your skin is coated with layers. Sweat, soot, animal fat, dust, and the sediment of shame. You itch constantly. You scratch constantly. You bleed occasionally. Under your clothes, if they qualify as clothes. You wear the same linen shift for weeks. You sleep in it. You work in it. You pray in it. You rot in it. Laundry is not a routine. It is an ordeal. You need soap, which is made from ashes and animal fat, and stinks worse than you. You need hot water. You need time. You have none of these, and so you live wrapped in your own skin's history. Your hair is matted, not by choice, but by evolution. You share it with lice. You call them guests, though they pay no rent and steal your peace. You've tried combing, once, with a wooden tool passed down through generations like a curse. The comb broke. The lice didn't. Children are born with lice. They die with lice. Adults treat them like weather, annoying, constant, and not worth arguing with. If you're especially devout or unusually well off, you might shave your head and wear a wig or cowl. This solves nothing. The lice simply move downstairs. Now, let's discuss teeth. You do have teeth, or at least you did. You were born with about 32. You currently have 9. 3 are black. 1 is loose. All of them hurt. Toothbrushes are a fantasy from the future. Toothpaste is a lie spread by merchants. You sometimes chew sticks. You sometimes swish wine if you can spare it, which you can't. Most days, you simply don't acknowledge your mouth. It's a lost cause. If you get a toothache, your options are praying or yanking. There is no third option. The village blacksmith can help. He has pliers and strong arms. He does not have anesthesia. He also doesn't have pity. He pulls and you scream. The tooth comes out. Sometimes part of your jaw does, too. You survive. Probably. Now we turn our noses to body odor. Yours is distinct. A mixture of unwashed sweat, fermented dairy, wet wool, and agricultural failure. Your armpits are swamps. Your feet are crimes. Your undercarriage is an ecosystem. There is no deodorant. There is only hope, and hope is a luxury. You wipe with leaves. You hope they're not toxic. You wash your hands, if you remember, by dipping them into communal buckets already used by others. This spreads disease, but you call it baptism. Let's talk about disease. Hygiene is not preventative. It is irrelevant. People do not wash to avoid illness. They pray, they fast, they confess. Germ theory does not exist. Filth is not linked to infection. That idea is centuries away. You believe illness comes from sin, imbalance, bad air, or your neighbor's evil eye. When someone dies of typhoid, the priest blames their character. When a child dies of dysentery, The mother blames herself. No one blames the bucket. Your water is tainted. Your food is handled with bare hands. Your fingers are used for everything. Digging, eating, scratching, praying. They are instruments of contamination, and no one notices. Fleas bite you. Rats crawl across your bed. Flies lay eggs in wounds. You shoo them lazily. You've accepted their presence. They are part of life now, like taxes or death or the constant awareness that your skin is trying to escape your body. In towns, there are bathhouses. Communal, crowded, condemned by the church but tolerated by the nose. Men and women sometimes bathe together. This is scandalous, which is why everyone secretly goes. The water is reused. 50 people enter. 50 diseases exit. You call it rejuvenation. Nobles bathe more often, by which we mean twice a year. They perfume their bodies. They apply powders. They layer scents like lies. They are not clean, just fragrant. Fragrance is the illusion of purity. You never experience either. Occasionally, during feast days or after giving birth or surviving a plague, someone might bathe you. You sit in a wooden tub, filled with brown water and cold shame. They scrub you with rough cloth until your skin burns. They pour lye or vinegar. You emerge slightly less crusted, but emotionally shattered. Children cry. Old people scream. No one enjoys it. Cleanliness is trauma. Women bear the brunt. They are expected to smell sweet, appear fresh, remain modest while hiding fungal infections and flea bites. They use herbal pouches, wear multiple shifts, and pretend that blood, milk, and sweat do not define their bodies. Everyone pretends. Everyone lies. You relieve yourself outside. There is no toilet. There is no seat. There is a hole in the ground if you're lucky. A ditch if you're desperate. You use whatever is nearby. Hay, moss, your sleeve. Sometimes you don't bother. You are tired. You are always tired. The waste seeps into the earth, into the water, into your future. You get infections. You get rashes. You get nothing in return. The latrine is communal. It stinks year-round. Children fall in. Some don't get out. You accept this. It's part of the rhythm. Hygiene is not a standard. It's a spectrum of surrender. The rich have scented gloves. The poor have dirty fingernails. Everyone has boils. Bathing becomes a metaphor. You dream of it. You whisper about it. You avoid it at all costs. The medieval world is not clean. It does not try to be. It is not obsessed with purity, only salvation. And if heaven requires filth, so be it. You will march there, itching. You will arrive, unwashed. And if the gates are closed, you will blame your neighbor. Not the lice, not the bucket, not yourself. Because in the Middle Ages, cleanliness is not next to godliness. It's next to heresy. You are now dressed. Congratulations. This is not a pleasant experience. Getting dressed in the Middle Ages is an act of submission, not expression. You are not stylish. You are not comfortable. You are not warm. You are simply no longer naked, which is considered an achievement. In a time where fabric is expensive, washing is mythical, and shame is enforced by both church and frostbite. Your clothes are not yours in the way you think. They do not reflect personality. They are not curated or color coordinated. They are not seasonal. They are not optional. They are inherited, patched, stiff, and hostile. Your shirt used to belong to your father. He died in it. You kept wearing it. The hole near the collar is not a design choice. It's where he got stabbed by a loose pig. No one talks about it. Your outer tunic is made of wool. Not the soft, creamy wool of modern lies, but thick, oily, scratchy medieval wool that seems woven from the concept of punishment. It was never washed properly. It was soaked, stomped, dried, and forgotten. It smells like lanolin, mildew, and resignation. The seams were sewn by someone who had neither the time nor the eyesight to do it well. The left arm twists slightly backward. You get used to it. Everyone gets used to it. Beneath the tunic, you wear a linen shift. Linen is your first layer and your last hope. It's supposed to wick moisture. It doesn't. It absorbs failure. The shift is rarely changed, and even more rarely cleaned. You sweat into it. You sleep in it. You scratch through it. It becomes a second skin, but worse. Skin eventually heals. Linen just frays. Your legs are encased in hose, which are essentially long, glorified socks attached to a belt or to each other, depending on your gender, status, and capacity for suffering. They sag constantly. You tie them up. They fall again. You develop a complex relationship with your knees. Sometimes they're visible. Sometimes they're cold. Always they're angry. Underwear, if it exists, is a luxury. You are not luxurious. If you're lucky, you wrap a cloth around your loins. If you're less lucky, and you usually are, you do nothing, and hope the tunic covers everything society deems indecent. This rarely works. One gust of wind, and your dignity is rearranged. Your belt is not decorative. It holds everything. Pouches, knives, tools, hope. It is made of leather, cracked and inflexible. It cuts into your waist like time cuts into your will. If you gain weight, which you won't, it doesn't fit. If you lose weight, which you will, it still doesn't fit. You adjust. You always adjust. Your shoes are theological in nature, as in, they exist solely to test your faith. Made of untreated leather, held together by desperation and twine. They offer no support and even less protection. You feel every stone, every thorn, every regret. The soles wear out within weeks. You patch them with straw, cloth, and broken promises. In winter, you add wool wrappings. In summer, you pretend the smell isn't following you. It is. Women's clothing is worse. Always heavier, always more layered, always more accusatory. A woman might wear a chemise, a kirtle, a gown, an apron, a veil, and judgment. Each layer traps heat, odor, and expectation. The veil is supposed to signify modesty. It also blocks sunlight, airflow, and any chance of cooling down. Women sweat in silence. They are trained to. Children wear miniature versions of adult clothes. There is no such thing as childhood comfort. A 5-year-old in hose and a lace tunic looks like a tiny accountant with a yeast infection. They cry often. Everyone pretends it's endearing. It isn't. There is no closet, no wardrobe, no options. You own 2 tunics if you're fortunate. One for wearing, one for wishing the other one would dry faster. Washing clothes involves a river, a rock, and a prayer. The soap is made from lie and pain. The result is never soft. Most people don't bother. Clothes are beaten, rinsed, and dried on hedges. Rain ruins everything. Sunshine bleaches the fabric and your morale. Buttons are rare. They haven't caught on yet. You tie everything. You lace everything. You fasten with bone, with hooks, with sheer willpower. Dressing takes time. Undressing takes longer. If you're in a hurry, you rip something. Then you cry. Then you sew. Sewing is not a hobby. It is survival. You repair constantly. Sleeves tear, hems fray, thread runs out. You reuse thread from other garments. You unmake to remake. You live in a cycle of decay and mending, much like your soul. Colors are muted. Earth tones, dirt tones, mud tones. If you see bright colors, run. The wearer is either a noble or a criminal in disguise. Either way, you're not part of the story. Dyes are expensive. Indigo costs lives. Purple costs countries. You wear brown because it's honest. It tells the truth. The truth is, you are poor, anonymous, and visibly uncomfortable. Fashion is dictated by your station. Sumptuary laws exist to remind you of that. You cannot wear silk. You cannot wear fur, unless it's vermin. You cannot wear anything that suggests you think too highly of yourself. Thinking is already suspicious. Dressing well is a provocation. The Lord wears velvet, brocade, and smugness. You wear wool, linen, and the knowledge that you will die in this outfit, Because you will. People are buried in what they wore. There are no funeral clothes. There are no clean shrouds. You die. They wrap you in your tunic. They tie your hands. They dig a hole. And the next person wears your belt. Clothes do not belong to people. They belong to time. You are just passing through. In the winter, you layer. You wear everything you own. You sleep in it. You sweat in it. You freeze anyway. In summer, you suffer. You cannot undress. Modesty is mandatory. Sunburn is common. Chafing is universal. Rashes are assumed. You walk with your thighs on fire and pretend it's penance. It might be. Sometimes it rains. Your clothes get wet. They stay wet. There is no drying, only mildew and regrets. You sleep in damp wool and wonder why you can't breathe. Your chest tightens. Your cough worsens. You ignore it. It's just part of the outfit. Even hats are a problem. Hoods trap heat. Straw hats fall apart. You wear a coif, which is essentially a bonnet for despair. It keeps lice in. It keeps romance out. You wear it anyway, because the wind is worse. Eventually, your clothes become part of you. They shape your posture. They define your scent. They record your movements in mud, blood, and time. You stop thinking about them as garments. They are armor against a world that never wanted you clothed to begin with. You are not stylish. You are not clean. You are not even warm. But you are covered. Mostly. And in the Middle Ages, that's the best you'll ever get. It is morning, or so you're told. The sun has risen, though you cannot see it through the fog, the thatch, or the weight of your own responsibilities. You rise. You eat. You dress. And now, you walk. This is not a commute. There is no road, no vehicle, no destination with heating, lighting, or purpose. There is only the field, and the distance between your hovel and that field is a labyrinth of hazards, so mundane they barely qualify as scenery. But make no mistake, the walk to work can, and often does, kill you. First, the path, or rather, the suggestion of a path. It's a trail carved by repetition, not design. There are no cobblestones, no gravel, no wooden planks. There is only mud in spring, dust in summer, ice in winter, and misery all year round. You walk this way every day, and yet every day it finds new ways to betray you. A root catches your foot. You trip. You fall. If you're lucky, you land in dung. If you're not, you land on your own dignity, which, like your health, is fragile and mostly imaginary. There are no shoes to protect you. What you wear on your feet is more ceremonial than functional. They were once boots. Now they're riddles. One heel is missing. The other is held on with twine. The leather is cracked. The soul is gone. Every step is an act of courage or stupidity, possibly both. You pass through a forested patch. It's quiet, but not safe. Wild animals are not mythical. They are real, hungry, and unimpressed by your attempts at bravado. A wolf might stalk you. A boar might charge. A snake might bite you just because it's Tuesday. You carry a stick. It gives you false confidence. It also gives you splinters. If you make it past the animals, there are the people. Not all of them are friendly. Some are thieves. Some are your neighbors, which is worse. They know what you have, and more importantly, they know what you don't. A loaf of bread in your satchel is a declaration of war. A new cloak is an invitation to get stabbed. You nod. You keep your eyes down. You move quickly, or as quickly as your aching legs allow. You pass a stream. You stop to drink. The water is clear, which means nothing. Cholera is invisible. So is dysentery. You drink anyway. It's that or collapse. You don't know about germs. You just know that some water kills slower than others. The fields come into view. You breathe deeply. This is a mistake. The air smells like manure, wet straw, and disappointment. Your sinuses close in protest. You continue. Along the way, you see others walking. Their posture is identical to yours. Curved forward, cautious, already tired. No one talks. There is nothing to say. You've all done this before. You'll do it again. Until someone dies or something worse happens, like tax season, the bridge is out again. It wasn't much of a bridge to begin with. A log, a prayer, and some moss. It washed away during last week's flood. You wade through the river instead. It reaches your thighs. Your clothes absorb the water like guilt. You will be wet all day. You will smell like fish and cold regret. You will probably get sick. You already are. The village bell rings in the distance, not to mark the hour, but to remind you that someone died last night. Again, you hope it wasn't your cousin. He owed you a turnip, but the bell doesn't tell you who. It just rings. Time in the Middle Ages is fluid, like soup, or moral responsibility. There are no clocks. There are no schedules. There is only the sun, your shadow, and the feeling in your bones. You are late, but no one will say so. They'll just look at you like you've insulted their ancestors, which technically you probably have. Along the way, you step in something unidentifiable. You don't look down. Looking down never helps. You keep walking. Your legs are tired. Your back is sore. You haven't even begun working yet. The path slopes upward. The mud becomes slick. You slip. You land on your side. Your hip strikes a stone. Something bruises. Something else cracks. You get up. There is no choice. Lying down is for corpses and nobles. You are neither. You pass a shrine. A wooden cross surrounded by wilted flowers and broken hopes. You pause. You mutter something that might be a prayer or a complaint. It doesn't matter. The sky doesn't listen. It never has. The wind picks up. It carries dust into your eyes. You blink. Your eye waters. You wipe it with your sleeve. Your sleeve is dirty. Now your eye is worse. Infection is coming. You pretend it isn't. Pretending is a national pastime. Children pass you on their way to their own form of labor. There is no school. Just miniature adulthood with worse pay. They carry baskets, tools, and the weight of generational poverty. One sneezes. You flinch. Plague has made everyone jumpy. You arrive at the field. Congratulations. You are exactly where you don't want to be. You're not dead, which is nice. You're not alive in any meaningful sense, which is more accurate. You are now ready to begin a day of brutal, back-breaking work. But first, you must catch your breath, which has wandered off somewhere around the river crossing. You look back at the path you just walked. It looks innocent. It always does. But you know the truth. The walk to work is a test of endurance, of health, of hope, and most days you fail it without even realizing. You cough, you spit, you stretch, something pops, you ignore it. The sun rises higher, your shadow shortens, your tasks await. The scythe is dull, the plough is broken, the ox is missing. You are expected to carry on anyway, because in the Middle Ages, transportation is not a luxury, it is a ritual of penance. You do not commute, you pilgrimage, and the destination is always suffering. You have arrived in the field, which is a generous term for a stretch of dirt so abused it has developed a personality disorder. This is not a fertile plain. This is not a canvas of opportunity. This is where hope comes to suffocate under a thin crust of overplanted soil and underfed peasants. You are not a farmer. You are a human-shaped plough attachment. There is no choice. You till or you die. You sow or you starve. The land owns you. The Lord owns the land. By transitive property, the Lord owns you. Welcome to the real feudal equation. Field labor begins before the sun is high, and ends long after your spine has filed a formal complaint. The tasks rotate with the seasons, but the pain does not. Spring means ploughing, which means dragging wooden blades through dirt that hates you. The plough is not sharp. The ox is not cooperative. If you are the ox, which happens more often than you'd think, you pull until your legs shake and your soul detaches politely from your body. Summer is planting, weeding, sweating, cursing, replanting, unweeding, and praying it rains but not too much. Autumn is harvest, which sounds festive until you realize it involves 12 hours of bending over while your lower back considers divorce. Winter is maintenance, which is another word for breaking frozen tools, fixing fences you didn't build, and pretending that cold air doesn't hurt your teeth when you breathe. Every season is a punishment. Every month is betrayal. Every task comes with splinters, blisters, and the lingering sense that you should have been born into the clergy. You bend at the waist. You bend again. You do this until your joints feel like they've been replaced with gravel and regret. Stretching is not a concept. Stretching is what happens when your tendons snap. You lift sacks of grain that weigh more than your future. You carry bundles of straw that poke holes in your clothing and your dignity. You scythe in perfect arcs, which look poetic from a distance, but feel like controlled falling with a blade. The blade is always dull. Sharpening it requires time, tools, and energy, none of which exist. So you swing it anyway, again and again, until your shoulders tremble and your hands blister, and the handle becomes slick with a mixture of sweat and indifference. You do not wear gloves. You do not wear protection. You do not wear anything that would suggest the body beneath your clothes matters. Your skin becomes raw, then calloused, then numb. Eventually, it becomes part of the landscape. Your knees are constantly coated in mud. You no longer know their original color. Your spine curves slightly more with each passing week. Medieval medicine calls this being poor. There is no break, no coffee, no smoke, no water cooler. The closest thing to a break is urinating behind a hedge and hoping the Lord's steward doesn't count it as time theft. You eat in the field, usually with one hand, usually while working. The food is cold, sparse, and not interested in your opinion. You chew on a piece of bread so tough it could be used in warfare. You drink water that is technically liquid but morally suspicious. There are no napkins. You wipe your hands on your tunic. Then you wipe your face. Now your face smells like soil and defeat. If it rains, you work. If it snows, you work. If the sky splits open and screams down Latin curses, you still work. Because to not work is to not eat. And to not eat is to become a poetic cautionary tale whispered about at night. No one wants to be a cautionary tale. Not because of the shame, but because no one remembers the details. You get injured. Of course you do. A tool slips. Your foot catches. Your hand bleeds. You tie it with cloth. You keep going. Infection is not an if, but a when. You ignore it until it becomes unbearable. Then you ignore it harder. Eventually, the limb either heals or it doesn't. Either way, you go back to the field. There are no sick days. There are no excuses. There is only labor, and the threat of being replaced by someone hungrier. You work beside others, but this does not make it communal. This is not a team sport. This is synchronized suffering. Conversations are rare and short. There is nothing to say. Everyone is tired. Everyone is hungry. Everyone is thinking about how this day is exactly the same as the one before and will be indistinguishable from the one after. You are surrounded by people, but you are alone. The overseer watches. He does not help. He comments. He counts. He records. Your quota is never met. Your work is never good enough. He makes a note on a scrap of parchment that will determine your taxes, your punishment, or your public humiliation next Sunday. You try not to hate him. You fail. Around you, nature does not sing. It groans. Birds screech. Insects swarm. Your hands are bitten. Your legs are bitten. You find a tick and remove it with a sharp rock. You name it first. Naming makes the pain feel more personal. You look up at the sky. You hope for shade. You hope for wind. You hope for divine intervention. You receive none. The sun burns through your coif. You sweat until your clothes cling like regrets. Then you sweat more. The salt dries on your skin in patterns that resemble suffering made visible. Time stretches. Not in the poetic sense, but in the torturous, gelatinous sense, where each second feels like a paragraph in a bad manuscript. You are living a footnote in someone else's story. A tale told by the dirt under your nails and the throb in your calves. Eventually, the light dims. Not because it is evening, but because your vision blurs from dehydration and overexertion. You wobble, You do not fall. Falling is a luxury. Falling gets noticed. You steady yourself with your rake, your scythe, your willpower. The day is not over. It is merely transitioning into a new form of disappointment. You gather the tools. You stack the sheaves. You count the baskets. The number is always lower than expected. The Lord will not be pleased. The steward will say something cutting. The priest will remind you that sloth is a sin. You will bow your head. You will say nothing. You will think dark thoughts, and then you will bury them under another layer of topsoil and obligation. You begin the walk home. Your legs scream. Your feet protest. Your arms dangle uselessly. You walk anyway, because there is no one to carry you, no one to pity you, no one to say your name without a sigh. You will arrive home. You will collapse. You will eat. You will sleep. You will rise. And you will return. Because field labor is not just a job. It is an inheritance, a sentence, a slow-motion execution by repetition. And you, poor soul, are both the condemned and the executioner. It is midday. The sun hangs directly overhead, not to offer warmth or guidance, but simply to remind you that time still exists and refuses to pass any faster. You are in the field. Your back is screaming. Your knees have lost the concept of trust, and your mouth feels like it's been lined with wool. You think of food, not because it will make anything better, but because you have reached that part of the day where the body protests loudly enough that the mind starts bargaining. You are, theoretically, approaching what is generously called lunch. But this is not lunch in the way your modern sensibilities have been conditioned to understand it. There is no break room. There is no menu. There is no microwave, no fork, no variety, and absolutely no joy. This is not a reward for hard work. This is a truce between the body and death. You sit, or rather, you collapse into a position that can no longer be called upright but is still vaguely human. Others do the same. No one speaks. Words require moisture. You have none left. The food is brought out. It has not been prepared fresh. It was packed hours ago, before sunrise, in a cloth that once belonged to someone you don't speak of anymore. Inside is bread, always bread, sometimes flat, sometimes round, never soft. It is dry, stale, and tastes like the corner of a forgotten cellar. You tear off a piece. It resists. Your teeth threaten to resign. You chew until the texture resembles something digestible. It takes time. You are no longer chewing. You are grinding. Slowly, grimly, methodically. Beside the bread is a lump of something you choose to call cheese. It is beige, or grey, or green, depending on the weather. It smells like a moral failing and feels like soapstone. You cut off a piece with a dull knife. You consider whether it's supposed to crumble or if that's a symptom. You eat it anyway. It provides calories. So does sawdust. The cheese sits in your stomach like a dare. There is also something in a cloth-wrapped bundle that used to be a vegetable. It is now a conceptual memory of a turnip. You gnaw on it, out of spite. Occasionally, someone has meat, salt pork, cured until it could double as roofing tile. It is hard, salty, and deeply suspicious. You trade half your bread for a corner of it, chew for 5 minutes, and conclude that flavor is a luxury and texture is punishment. If you are lucky, exceptionally, undeservedly lucky, there is a bit of stew left over from last night, carried in a shared pot. You dip your bread in it. It absorbs slowly, as if questioning your intentions. The stew is made of things that didn't rot fast enough to be thrown away. Beans, roots, possibly rat. It is warm, or was. It is edible, or isn't. Either way, you eat it, because the other option is not eating, and you've already done that for most of your life. You drink water. It is warm, metallic, and carried in a reused flask that used to hold something better but hasn't since the last plague. You sip slowly, not to savor it, but to delay disappointment. If there is ale, you drink it, not for refreshment, but because it is safer than water, dulls your headache, and might convince your joints to stop screaming for a moment. If there is no ale, you pretend there is. Pretending is a critical part of medieval survival. No one asks for seconds. There aren't any. There is no dessert. There is no palate cleanser. There is no, that hit the spot. The spot remains unhit. The hunger remains, slightly muffled but still very present. You sit in silence, surrounded by chewing noises, the distant sound of a crow mocking you from a tree, and the soft, constant buzzing of flies that find your face more appetizing than your meal. The wind picks up. Your lunch cloth blows away. You don't chase it. You lack the energy, the shoes, and the optimism. It's gone now, like your dreams. You wipe your hands on your tunic. Again, the stains blur together. Bread grease meets soil, meets something from the pig pen you don't want to identify. You call it workwear, and pretend that makes it acceptable. A bee lands on your knuckle. You let it stay. It is, at this point, the most dignified company you've had all week. Eventually, the overseer stands up. He says nothing. He doesn't need to. His body language says, the break is over. The fantasy has ended. The illusion of mercy is finished. You rise. Slowly, groaning. Something in your hip whispers betrayal. You ignore it. Your feet feel heavier now, not because of the food, but because sitting down reminded them they exist. You return to your spot in the field. The sun has not moved. You feel cheated. Time in the Middle Ages is subjective. Mostly it feels like it isn't happening at all. As you begin working again, your stomach churns in quiet protest. It did not want food. It wanted nutrients. You gave it ancient bread and defiant cheese. It will retaliate later, when you are trying to sleep and have no access to medicine. The afternoon will be harder. The body now has to work with just enough energy to be disappointed, but not enough to be productive. You wonder if anyone in history has ever truly enjoyed lunch. You conclude that they haven't, or if they have, they weren't peasants, or alive. You scrape the last crumbs from your fingernails. A fly lands on your nose. You slap it half-heartedly. You sigh. And you continue. Because lunch is not a break. It is not relief. It is not nourishment. It is a ritual. A symbolic nod to the idea that life still goes on, even if every part of your body hopes it doesn't. You have a headache, or maybe it's your back, or your joints, or your chest, or your stomach, or all of them, indistinguishably merged into one unified expression of mortal decay. It doesn't matter which body part is failing. In the Middle Ages, pain isn't a symptom. It's a baseline. Everyone hurts. Always. Pain is not something you fix. It's something you interpret. It means you're alive. For now, you clutch your side and keep working. You hope it passes. It doesn't. You think about visiting the local healer, if you can call her that. She's the widow who knows about plants. She's respected and feared, and probably watched by the church for signs of unapproved competence. She gives you a foul-smelling salve made from ground roots and goat lard. You rub it in. It burns. You assume this means it's working. It isn't. You try not to complain. Complaining attracts attention. Attention leads to diagnosis. Diagnosis leads to bleeding. Bleeding leads to death. The medieval medical system is built on 4 pillars. They are blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. You are expected to have them all, in exactly the right amounts, constantly swirling inside your body like a toxic stew of cosmic balance. You do not. No one does. So everything is a medical emergency. You have too much blood? Cut you open. Too little? Feed you leeches. Congestion? Drill your skull. Melancholy? Burn herbs and hope the demons take the hint. A village barber might help you. He's the man who cuts hair, pulls teeth, sets broken bones, and performs minor surgery with the same tools and level of confidence. He sharpens his blade on a rock, wipes it on his apron, and gestures for you to sit. There is no anesthesia. There is no sterilization. There is only courage, screaming, and the vague hope that God is in the room and paying attention. If your problem is spiritual, and it always is, the priest intervenes. He listens to your confession, determines which sin caused your infection, and prescribes repentance. Sometimes that means fasting. Sometimes it means flogging. Occasionally it means exorcism. Your cough is not viral. It is moral. Your rash is not fungal. It is divine retribution for thinking uncharitable thoughts about your neighbor's sheep. If your condition is visible, boils, sores, deformities, you are kept at a distance, not because of contagion, but because of judgment. Your body becomes a public warning. Children are told to avoid you. Adults avoid you anyway. You become a lesson in humility and God's mysterious sense of humor. For women, it's worse. A stomach cramp could be a digestive issue, or a pregnancy, or witchcraft. The diagnosis is the same: isolation, suspicion, and a ritual involving smoke, salt, and increasingly anxious prayer circles. If you're lucky, the midwife believes in mercy. If you're not, the inquisitor believes in fire. Herbal remedies are common. They rarely work. Not because plants are useless, but because no one knows what dose, what preparation, or what plant they're even holding. You chew on bark. You boil leaves. You wear garlic around your neck because someone's cousin once avoided a fever while doing it. Logic is not part of this. Tradition is. So is desperation. You visit the apothecary if you live near one. He gives you powder scraped from a mummy, ground coral, or dried snake. You mix it into wine. If it tastes bad, it's probably good. If it kills you, it's probably your fault. Education in medicine comes from Galen and Hippocrates, both long dead, both occasionally correct, and neither adapted for your lifestyle of malnutrition and trench foot. Physicians are rare. If they exist at all, they're employed by someone who matters. You don't matter. You see the village wise woman instead. She knows things. That makes her dangerous. That makes her useful. That makes her a convenient scapegoat when your boils don't improve and your neighbors need someone to blame. If your condition worsens, and it always does, you are told to rest. Rest means lying on the same straw mat you work, sleep, and die on. There is no comfort. There is no warmth. The wind whistles through the walls. The damp clings to your lungs. The rat that lives in the corner stares at you like it's measuring your expiration date. If you're feverish, they wrap you in blankets and mutter prayers. If you're delirious, they call for the priest and start digging a shallow hole just in case. Medical supplies include bandages made from old linens, ointments stored in animal bladders, and hope, which is quickly exhausted. If your wound becomes infected, and it will, for they apply honey, or ashes, or butter. These things do not help. They do, however, make you easier to smell from a distance, which is useful when the plague arrives. Ah, the plague, Black Death, sweating sickness, leprosy, St. Anthony's fire. You don't know which one you'll get, but you will get something. Everyone does. You cough, they step back. You sweat, they stop bringing food. You collapse. They tie a bell around your ankle so they can hear when you stop moving. If the plague doesn't kill you, the cure will. People are bled, purged, smoked, prayed over, shaved, starved, and sometimes beaten in the belief that demons can be frightened away by pain. The demons remain unimpressed. If someone survives, they are called a miracle. If someone dies, they are called sinful. If you recover, no one thanks the medicine. They thank God. If you die, no one blames the medicine. They blame you. So you carry your pain quietly. You limp. You groan. You wince. But you keep working. Because illness does not excuse you from taxes, labor, or public appearances. It simply becomes part of the performance. A limp is a reminder. A cough is a rhythm. A bandage is a badge of survival. Children die frequently. Infants more so. No one names them until they're old enough to walk. Naming things creates attachments. Attachments lead to sorrow. Sorrow leads to distraction. And distraction leads to mistakes, which lead to more funerals. The cycle is predictable. You expect it. You do not challenge it. To be ill is not to be broken. It is to be human. To be dying is not an event. It is a lifestyle. In the afternoon, someone collapses in the field. They are not dead. Yet, you fetch water. You fan them with your hat. You pour wine into their mouth. They sputter. They vomit. They open their eyes. Everyone nods. They are fine. They are not fine. But they are not dead. And that's enough. For now, in the Middle Ages, medicine is not a science. It is a gamble played with dirty hands and blind faith. It is prayer wrapped in suffering, tied with superstition, and handed to you with the instruction to be grateful. You accept it. You have no choice. And as your tooth begins to ache again, and your stomach groans in complaint, and your skin itches in places you can't reach, you whisper a quiet wish that tomorrow you will feel better. You won't. But you whisper it anyway, because in this world, hope is the only prescription that never runs out, and it still doesn't work. It is not enough to be poor, cold, tired, malnourished, uneducated, and slowly dying of chronic exposure and untreated infections. You must also be holy, or at least appear to be. In the Middle Ages, religion is not a personal choice. It is not a spiritual journey. It is not something you dabble in when you have time between goat milking and existential dread. It is the air you breathe, the water you drink, the reason your crops fail, and the explanation for your mother's seizures. It is everywhere, and it is watching you. The church is not one part of your life. It is the structure around which your life is painfully wrapped, like a peasant in a badly sewn woolen shroud. There are rules, there are rituals, there are saints, there are relics, there are mandatory fast days and feast days, confession days and flagellation days, and days where you're not entirely sure what's happening but someone's waving incense and your knees hurt from kneeling. You follow the calendar, not the one with months and moon phases, but the one based on which apostle got martyred and how loudly. It is Tuesday, or maybe the feast of St. Blasius, or possibly the third Wednesday after Candlemas. You don't know, but you are expected to be reverent. Always. You wake up, you cross yourself. You pass a church, you cross yourself. You sneeze, someone says, God bless you, and if you don't say amen fast enough, they look at you like you've just invited Lucifer into the village by coughing out of rhythm. You attend Mass, not occasionally, not weekly, constantly. It is not optional, it is not social. It is a mandatory public performance of submission to God, the clergy, and the idea that suffering brings you closer to salvation. The service is in Latin. You do not speak Latin. No one you know speaks Latin. But the priest does, and that's enough. You don't need to understand the words. Understanding is not the point. Obedience is. You kneel. You stand. You kneel again. Your knees crack. The floor is cold. You smell burning wax and old wood, and the faint odor of someone's unwashed humility. You repeat the parts you've memorized phonetically, like a child reciting magical words to keep monsters away. It's not so different. The priest is both feared and revered. He hears confessions. He absolves sins. He also reports you to the bishop if you express any theological opinions more complicated than God is good and I am garbage. You fear him, not because he has power over your soul, but because he has power over your property, your body, and your chances of not being burned for heresy. The church owns land, more land than anyone, including the nobility. It collects tithes, rents, indulgences, and obedience. You pay 10% of everything you grow, make, or steal. You also pay in time, in labor, in guilt. If you complain, they remind you that Jesus was poor too. He did not, however, have to deal with the archdeacon's annual inspection of your pigpen. You wear a cross. You do not wear it because it gives you comfort. You wear it because not wearing it would raise eyebrows. And raised eyebrows in a village of 10 people leads to suspicion. And suspicion leads to questioning. And questioning leads to trial by ordeal, which is like a medical checkup except the doctor is fire and the outcome is death. Religion tells you everything you need to know. Why it rains, why it doesn't, why your child died, why your cow won't produce milk, why your neighbor's wife ran off with the Cooper. Every mystery of the universe is pre-packaged with divine justification. You are not encouraged to ask follow-up questions. The Bible exists. You cannot read it. It is chained to the lectern in the church, written in Latin, and guarded like a sacred relic, which it is, because access to knowledge is dangerous, and in this world, danger is strictly regulated. The saints are everywhere, each with their own assigned domain of influence. Saint Apollonia for toothaches, Saint Roque for plague, Saint Roque, Anthony for skin diseases. You do not pray to God directly unless it's serious. You delegate to the specialists. If your prayer is not answered, you assume you've done it wrong, or that you're being tested, or punished, or both. It's never the system. It's always you. Religious festivals are supposed to be joyous. They are not. They involve standing for hours in mud, watching a parade of relics carried past by people in nicer clothes, while you pretend your knees aren't locked and your stomach isn't empty. You sing hymns you don't understand. You light candles you can't afford. You kiss the ring of a man who smells like rosewater and power. You go home and feel exactly the same, except slightly more judged. The threat of hell is omnipresent. You are told, in vivid and horrifying detail, what will happen if you sin. You will burn. You will scream. You will be flayed by demons and stuffed into orifices that you did not know had names. You are told this from the age of 5. You believe it. You fear it. You picture it constantly. It shapes your thoughts, your choices, your posture. Sin is not just action. It is temptation, desire, thought. You can be damned for imagining something impure. You can be damned for dreaming about something that makes you happy. You develop guilt as a second language. There is no privacy. The priest knows everything. The church watches everything. Your fellow villagers watch you too, because if they report you first, it means they're less likely to be accused next. Paranoia becomes a communal activity. You suppress your doubts. You suppress your questions. You suppress your identity. And in doing so, you become the ideal medieval Christian, obedient, terrified, and just superstitious enough to keep buying candles. You are told that joy is not the goal. Heaven is, and heaven is better than this. But only if you behave. You ask what behaving means. They hand you a list. It is contradictory, endless, and updated weekly depending on which bishop is visiting. You memorize it anyway. You have to, because mistakes are eternal. Purgatory is real. It is a place where you suffer until God gets around to forgiving you. It lasts for decades, centuries, eternities. You can shorten it, of course, with money, prayers, indulgences. You can buy your way into heaven, or at least into the express lane out of limbo. You give what little you have, not because you think it works, but because not giving would look suspicious. You believe because not believing is impossible. There is no atheism. There is no alternative. The church is not a religion. It is infrastructure. It is law. It is language. It is the only constant in your life, besides dirt and disappointment. You live in fear. You die in fear. And if you're lucky, your grave is blessed. If not, you haunt the village as a restless spirit until someone prays you away. And even then, there are no guarantees. In the Middle Ages, you have a place, not a metaphorical place, not a spiritual calling, not an aspirational LinkedIn role with upward potential. You have a slot, a rank, a station, and you stay there forever. This is not up for discussion. The social hierarchy is fixed, divine, and reinforced with every sermon, tax, wedding, punishment, and meal. It is not a ladder, it is a wall, and your feet are stuck in the mud at the bottom of it. You are a peasant. That means you are born into labor, baptized into obligation, and buried under debt. Your title is not farmer, but villain. It sounds French because it is, and like most things French in this period, it exists to remind you that someone else owns you. You cannot leave the land. You cannot choose another trade. You cannot marry without permission. You are, legally, a serf, which is just another way of saying property with limited breathing rights. Above you, just slightly, are free men. They are also poor, also miserable, but they can leave the village without being hunted down by a steward. This makes them slightly more smug and equally doomed. Above them are the merchants, traders, craftsmen. These are the people who have tools, apprentices, and an unearned sense of importance. They live in towns. Towns have walls. Walls mean taxes, guilds, and a new kind of oppression that involves paperwork. Then there are the knights, the armoured middle management of medieval society. They kill things, or used to, or hope to. Most of the time they collect rent, beat peasants, and polish their swords in both literal and metaphorical ways. They serve the lords. The lords own everything: the fields, the woods, the rivers, the peasants, the oxen, even the wind, if they can figure out how to tax it. A lord can demand your labour, your daughter, and your best pig, and still act like you owe him a thank you gift. He lives in a manor, which is just a drafty stone building filled with damp tapestries and unresolved childhood trauma. Above the lords are the barons, dukes, counts, earls, and other people with multiple syllables in their titles and zero empathy in their hearts. They wage wars over land they've never seen, dispute borders they don't understand, and sponsor tournaments while their tenants eat bark. They speak French, badly. They write letters, rarely. They believe deeply in the concept of honour, as long as it doesn't interfere with profit. And then, far above, barely visible through the haze of incense and inherited delusion, is the king, the monarch, the chosen one. Chosen, by whom, is never specified. God, presumably, which is convenient. The king owns all the land, all the people, all the suffering. He rarely visits, he rarely bathes, but he exists, like the sun, distant, powerful, and occasionally responsible for droughts. You will never meet him. He will never think about you. That's how power works. Even further up, if you can imagine such things, is the church. Not the local parish priest, but the full ecclesiastical hierarchy. Bishops, archbishops, cardinals, popes. They live in cathedrals, wear embroidered robes, and quote scripture in Latin while deciding whether your mud hut needs to pay another tithe this quarter. They claim to represent God. God is notably silent on the matter. There are also monks and nuns. They live in cloisters and do very little talking, unless it's about discipline, copying texts, or producing cheese. They are respected, but not envied. Their lives are simple, which means cold, repetitive, and filled with psalms at 4 a.m. You, as a peasant, interact with the hierarchy only when it wants something. Labor, grain, obedience. When you want something, like protection, food, or justice, the hierarchy is busy, or away, or praying. The system works only in one direction. You give, they take. If you question this arrangement, you are told that it is the natural order, that God made it so, that everyone has their role. Yours just happens to involve more dirt and pain and premature dental collapse. The hierarchy is reinforced through law, culture, architecture, and clothing. You can't wear silk. You can't own a horse. You can't hunt deer. Not because you're incapable, but because those are upper-class privileges. Even colours are restricted. A sumptuary law can fine you for wearing purple if you don't have the right bloodline, which you don't, because bloodlines matter. Blood is everything. Lineage determines legitimacy. Illegitimacy is a status, not an accident. Your father was a peasant. Your grandfather was a peasant. Your son will be a peasant, unless he dies first, which is likely. You are not expected to rise. You are expected to endure. The only acceptable upward mobility is religious. You might send your child to a monastery. You might take vows. You might renounce the world. This is celebrated because it removes one mouth from the grain supply. If you are clever, you might become a clerk, learn Latin, join the bureaucracy, Work your way into the lower echelons of ecclesiastical power. But this requires education, connections, and several miracles. You possess none of these. You stay where you are, where you were born, in your lane. Social stability is maintained through violence and storytelling. The violence is public. Executions, floggings, pillories. The message is clear. Step out of line, and you will bleed. The storytelling is subtle. Tales of noble heroes, of divine order, of loyalty and service. You sing these songs while threshing. They keep your hands moving and your imagination trapped. Occasionally someone tries to rise. A merchant gets rich. A knight marries well. A clever woman heals the sick. These people are tolerated. Briefly. Until they become threatening. Then the laws change. Or the rumors start. Or the church takes an interest. The hierarchy adjusts itself like a wounded animal. Quietly, but lethally. You know your place. You teach your children their place. You do not dream. Dreaming is a luxury. You do not rebel. Rebellion is treason. And treason ends with your head on a spike, while your family is fined for the inconvenience. You survive by staying small, predictable, grateful. You bow when expected. You kneel when told. You work when summoned. You die when forgotten. And if you do all this perfectly, without complaint, you are rewarded with the hope that in the next life, maybe, possibly, if the balance sheet of your soul comes out clean, you'll be born into a slightly less miserable station, but probably not. You wake up early because today is market day, and market day is supposed to be exciting. It is not. Market day is chaos with a price tag. It is noise, smell, risk, and disappointment, compressed into a few muddy hours of shouting, haggling, and trying not to get pickpocketed by a child half your size, who is definitely better fed. You put on your least ragged tunic, which is still entirely ragged, and stuff a few sad coins and a handful of onions into your pouch. This is your trade, your currency, your hope. The market promises goods. You are promised nothing. You walk for miles, avoiding puddles that look shallow but are actually medieval sinkholes. You hold your breath when you pass the tanner's stall, where the smell of boiled hide and failure hangs in the air like an omen. The closer you get, the louder it becomes. Voices shout in at least 4 dialects. Animals bleat, squeal, cluck, and protest their future. A pig tries to escape. A man tries to stop it. The pig wins. You step into the square. There is no structure, no order, no lanes. Just tightly packed people pushing towards slightly less dirty displays of items they probably can't afford. There are stalls selling dried beans, sacks of salt, barrels of fish that were once fresh in theory, and herbs that might be medicinal or just leafy lies. You approach a stall and ask for a price. The merchant sizes you up. He sees your patched cloak and your hopeful eyes. He doubles the cost. You pretend to consider. He pretends to care. You trade 3 onions for a lump of cheese that will definitely turn against you by sunset. Congratulations. You are now poorer and lactose intolerant. Markets are supposed to be about freedom, trade, choice. But you have none of these. You are here because you have to be. You need soap. You need nails. You need to sell enough turnips to afford candles for winter. You will not succeed. Someone is selling knives. You do not need a knife. You need shoes. But the knife is shiny. It catches your attention. You look. The merchant grins. This is a mistake. Now he thinks you're interested. You back away slowly. He yells after you in a dialect that sounds threatening even when it's polite. You escape into the crowd. You are now wedged between a sheep and someone who hasn't bathed since the last coronation. You step aside and land in something wet. You do not ask questions. There are entertainers, musicians, jugglers, men on stilts, offering distraction in exchange for coin you don't have. A boy with a flute plays the same note over and over. It's unclear if he knows more. It's unclear if the flute is even real. A beggar grabs your arm. You avoid eye contact. You mutter something that might be pity or guilt. You are one missed harvest away from joining him. A tax collector makes his rounds. He wears a leather pouch and a look of someone who enjoys subtraction. He asks what you've earned. You show him your pouch. He takes a coin. You do not argue. Last time someone argued, they spent a week in the stocks next to a goat with indigestion. You've never looked at goats the same since. You try to sell your last onion. A woman offers you half a turnip. You stare at her. She stares back. This is negotiation. You agree. You now own half a turnip and a sense of existential crisis. The market is full of sounds. Barkers yelling. Children crying. Chickens protesting their cages. Bells ringing for reasons no one understands. You try to find the man who sells thread. He has vanished. Probably died. Probably reinvented himself as someone who doesn't sell thread. You need thread. Your cloak is falling apart. You sigh and tie it with straw. Fashion is a form of surrender. You spot a nobleman walking through the square. He is escorted. He is perfumed. He is inspecting the poor like someone judging livestock. People bow. You bow. You hate yourself a little, but not enough to stop. He buys a goose and tips a copper coin to a vendor. The vendor weeps. You consider weeping too. Then you remember it won't help. Nothing helps. A fight breaks out near the fish stall. Someone claimed a mackerel that belonged to someone else. Words become shouts. Shouts become fists. The constable watches for a moment, then walks away. Justice in the market is about who bleeds first. A monk passes by, rattling a collection plate. You drop in a crumb of bread. He blesses you. You feel neither blessed nor full. You wonder how the bread disappeared from your hand. The market continues. A juggler drops his pins. A goose escapes. A man sneezes and is immediately shunned. Rumors of plague make the rounds like gossip at a monastery. No one confirms anything. Everyone becomes slightly more anxious. You find the man who sells pots. He offers you a dented pan. You don't need it. You buy it anyway. You've forgotten why. The market drains your logic. The sun starts to set. You gather your purchases. A wedge of suspect cheese, a pan, half a turnip, and a piece of cloth that might be edible. You count your coins. There are none. You had 5. Now you have disappointment. The crowd begins to thin. The stalls close. The beggars remain. You begin the walk home. Your feet ache. Your back aches. Your stomach protests. You left with hope. You return with objects. Not value, just weight. At home, you show your family the cheese. They look at it like it might bite. You pretend it was a good trade. They pretend to believe you. This is the unspoken agreement of survival. The market was not your friend. It never was. It is a mirror held up to your desperation. A parade of things you cannot have, wrapped in the illusion of possibility. You will go again next week. You always do. Not because it gets better, but because it's the only place you can pretend it might. You have finished your labor for the day. Or at least, you think you have. The sun is low. Your hands are stiff. Your knees make sounds that suggest structural failure, and the scythe no longer responds to commands. You should rest. But you won't, because in the Middle Ages, rest is not peace. Rest is a risk. Rest means eyes are on you. Rest means someone might ask what you're avoiding, what you're hiding, what you're plotting. Leisure is not restorative. It is suspicious. Productivity is survival. Idleness is heresy. And everyone is watching. You sit by the fire, not because it's warm, but because it's the only light left. You keep your hands busy. You mend a sock. You stir a pot. You sweep the same corner twice. Movement is your defense. Your spouse does the same. No one speaks. Speech is dangerous when there's silence to fill. Children are allowed to play, briefly, and only if that play involves gathering twigs or pretending to churn butter. Anything more joyful invites scrutiny. Laughter is tolerated in small doses, preferably directed at livestock. If someone hears you laughing alone, you might be branded a lunatic, or worse, an intellectual. The church has opinions about free time, mostly that you shouldn't have any. Time spent not working is time spent thinking. And thinking, unsupervised, leads to questions. The kind of questions that get people burned. So instead of thinking, you pray, you read scripture, if you can read, which you can't. Or you listen to someone else read it in Latin, which you also don't understand. This is fine. Understanding is not part of the ritual. Compliance is. The village enforces a kind of soft surveillance. The neighbors know when you're not where you're supposed to be. The steward takes notes. The priest remembers. Your absence at the evening bell is not just noticed, it is recorded. You are expected to show your face, your hands, your guilt. You are not expected to appear happy. Happiness implies satisfaction. Satisfaction implies independence. Independence is a threat. The only sanctioned form of rest is collapse. You may lie down when your body fails. You may sleep when your limbs rebel, but only then. Anything else is indulgence. You may attend festivals, of course, holy days, feast days, market days, but these are not leisure. They are obligation with banners. You will stand for hours. You will fast. You will cheer on cue. You will watch a knight fall off a horse and pretend it was inspiring. Then you will walk home and resume being tired in private. The idea of recreation exists, but only for the wealthy. Nobles hunt. Nobles dance. Nobles joust. You do none of these things. Your hobbies include not dying, not starving, and not being noticed. Games exist, but they are regulated. Dice games are sinful. Card games don't exist yet. Board games are acceptable only if they teach moral lessons. You play 9 Men's Morris, slowly, with a frown, because too much joy could be mistaken for rebellion. Music is allowed, cautiously. A lute played too well invites questions. A flute played too cheerfully suggests demonic influence. Singing is fine if it's a hymn. Anything else invites the wrath of the elderly. You hum softly. Someone glares. You stop. The fire burns low. You stretch your legs. They hurt. You think about lying down. You hesitate. Someone might see. You reach for a stool. You sit halfway, just in case you need to stand up quickly and pretend you were doing something. Your eyes drift. Your head nods. A child coughs. You're awake again. The chickens rustle. You wonder if anyone else is sleeping. You envy them, or you suspect them. You're not sure which. Night falls. You should be asleep, but you lie there, eyes open, listening, for footsteps, for judgments, for God. The idea of leisure has become a weight. You feel guilty for thinking about it. You remember the sermon about sloth. You remember the punishment for laziness. You remember the man who whistled while walking and was fined for disturbing the moral order. You remind yourself to never whistle, or walk with rhythm, or appear content. A rat scurries across the floor. You stare at it. It stares back. You both understand each other. You are two creatures of the night, afraid to be still for too long in case someone assumes you're enjoying yourselves. You turn over. The straw pricks your skin. You scratch. You mutter. You close your eyes and count the things you didn't finish today. The list is long. You fall asleep anyway. You dream of doing nothing. You wake up ashamed. Leisure is not for you. Leisure is for saints and nobles and the dead. You are none of those. Not yet. Until then, you move. You work. You pretend. Because in the Middle Ages, rest is treason with good posture. And you, tired though you are, cannot afford to look guilty. Nightfall in the Middle Ages is not peaceful. It is not romantic. It is not a time for reflection, intimacy, or philosophical wonder. It is a problem, a dangerous, suffocating problem. You do not welcome night, you endure it, because when the sun disappears, so does safety, and you are left with darkness, silence, and every unpleasant possibility you tried not to think about during the day. There are no streetlights, no torches unless you're wealthy, no candles unless you're wasteful. The fire in the hearth sputters. It is your only light, and it throws shadows across the room that look like sins and feel like warnings. The hut creaks. Every sound is louder at night. The wind whispers through cracks in the walls. You pretend it's not a voice. You tell yourself rats don't whisper. You hope you're right. Your body is tired, but your mind is wide awake. You lie on a mattress made of straw and insects. It rustles when you breathe. It pokes you in the ribs. It moves on its own. You pretend not to notice. You pull a thin blanket over yourself. It smells like everything you've done wrong. You share it with your spouse, 3 children, and possibly the neighbor's cousin who just needed a place to sleep for one night 4 weeks ago. No one complains. No one has space to. If you shift too much, someone elbows you. If you sigh too loud, someone shushes you. You lie still, uncomfortably still. Outside, the world transforms. Daytime paths become hunting grounds. The woods become alive with sounds you can't identify. Owls hoot, wolves howl, something screams. It might be an animal. It might be a person. You do not check. You are not a hero. You are barely insured. Doors are locked, if you have one. If not, you bar the entrance with a plank of wood and optimism. The walls do not keep out the cold, or the wind, or the idea that someone with a knife might decide your turnips are worth killing for. Bandits exist. So do mercenaries. So do drunk knights with boundary issues. They travel at night. Because they can. Because you can't stop them. If you hear hooves, you stay down. If someone knocks, you do not answer. Nothing good ever comes after dark. You might wake up to fire, to shouting, to your thatched roof, burning because someone was careless, or vengeful, or bored. If it happens, you grab what you can. If you're lucky, it's your family. If you're unlucky, it's the wooden spoon your grandmother gave you before she died of smoke inhalation. The night is also when the sick get worse. Coughs deepen, fevers rise, breathing becomes uncertain. You hold a damp cloth to a forehead and whisper to a god who doesn't specialize in urgent care. If the person dies, you wait until morning to tell anyone. Death at night feels contagious. And besides, there's protocol. There are prayers. There is digging, all of which require daylight. If you have livestock, you check on them before sleeping. Not because you care, though you might, but because a stolen chicken means 2 days without eggs and 1 week of suspicion toward your neighbors. You count the animals. You count them again. You nod. You go inside. The chicken coop door doesn't close properly. You ignore it. You hope foxes are busy tonight. You climb back onto the straw pile. Your back protests. Your legs twitch. Your feet throb. The fire is lower now. It casts enough light to remind you that the room is small, the ceiling is low, and your future is shorter than you want it to be. You listen to the breathing around you. Heavy, uneven, muffled by blankets and years of effort. Someone snores. Someone mumbles. Someone whimpers. You lie awake and stare at nothing. You think about death, not in a dramatic way, not with poetry, just in the quiet, practical sense that it might come tonight, that it might already be in the room, that you might not wake up, or worse, that you will. And you'll have to do all of this again. Sleep is not guaranteed. Sleep is a favor. And the body, after a lifetime of misuse, does not always cooperate. You shift, you stretch, something cramps, you curse quietly, you pray louder, the room stays silent. Time moves slower at night. Seconds feel like sermons, minutes like confessions. You count them anyway, because what else is there to do? You cannot read, you cannot leave, you cannot speak, you can only exist. Light flickers on the wall. You stare at it, and remember the story of the devil who visits people at night and steals their breath. You laugh, silently, because the devil has competition. Life does that just fine without supernatural assistance. Eventually, your eyes close, not out of peace, but from exhaustion. You do not drift off. You collapse into unconsciousness. If you dream, it will be of rain leaking through the roof, of grain spoiling in the cellar, of wolves stealing the baby pig. You will wake up unsure if any of it happened. You will go check. You will find nothing, or something worse. Morning will come. The rooster will scream. The children will stir. Your back will ache. Your eyes will burn. You will sit up and realize that your only reward for surviving the night is the privilege of facing the day. But for now, for this moment, you are still. You are horizontal. You are not bleeding. And in the medieval world, that counts as success. You have survived everything so far. The hunger, the labor, the church, the hierarchy, the rot. You are poor, tired, overworked, and probably diseased. But if you are a woman, none of that matters, because it's about to get worse. Much worse. Being a woman in the Middle Ages is not simply a harder version of being a man. It is a different category of suffering entirely. You are not considered fully human in a legal sense. You are property. You belong to your father until you are married off, usually as soon as it becomes biologically possible, and then you belong to your husband. If he dies, you may belong to his brother. If you die, no one belongs to you. That is not how this works. Your role is predefined, inherited, and enforced. You are here to obey, serve, reproduce, and die. Not necessarily in that order. Your education, if it exists at all, is limited to religious instruction, basic household skills, and the ability to stitch quietly while pretending you don't have opinions. You are not taught to read, unless you're wealthy. You are not taught to speak in public, unless spoken to. You are certainly not taught to lead, unless you're a nun with a death wish. From the moment you are born, your body is considered a liability. It is a vessel, a temptation, a symbol of sin. The church teaches that Eve ruined everything. You are Eve. You are the reason pain exists, the reason men fall, the reason there is death, suffering, and taxation. You are told this frequently, sometimes by men, sometimes by other women, who have absorbed it so deeply they repeat it out of habit. Your clothing reflects your status. That is to say, it's designed to restrict movement and suppress individuality. You are wrapped in layers of rough wool, fastened with knots you cannot undo without assistance, topped with a veil to remind you that your hair, like your voice, is a danger to the moral order. If you are unmarried, you are a temptation. If you are married, you are a servant. If you are widowed, you are suspicious. If you are childless, you are cursed. If you are fertile, you are exhausted. Pregnancy is not a celebration. It is a sentence. You will likely give birth many times. You may survive once or twice. There are no hospitals, no doctors, no anesthesia. You deliver on the floor or in a corner, surrounded by women who pray you don't bleed to death too quickly. If the child dies, it is your fault. If you die, it is God's will. Either way, no one writes your name down. Your labor never ends. If you are not in the field, you are in the kitchen. If not the kitchen, then the yard. If not the yard, then spinning, weaving, fetching, scrubbing, grinding, soaking, kneading, nursing, mending, or burying someone else. Rest is not part of your vocabulary. Neither is reward. You eat last. You sleep least. You wake first. If you raise your voice, you are scolded. If you cry, you are mocked. If you stay silent, you are invisible. There is no winning, only enduring. Your sexuality is a commodity. You do not control it. It is used for alliances, dowries, heirs, and punishments. You can be married off at 12, pregnant by 13, widowed by 20, and accused of adultery for being seen talking to someone in public. You are never safe. Rape is not considered a crime against you. It is a crime against your husband or father's property. If you report it, you must prove it. You cannot. There are no witnesses. There is no evidence. There is only shame. Your shame, not his. Never his. If you resist, you are blamed. If you don't, you are blamed. If you survive, you are blamed. And if you speak, you are told to pray. Unless you are beautiful, then you are resented. Unless you are not, then you are ridiculed. Unless you are clever, then you are feared. Unless you are quiet, then you are ignored. Unless you are loud, then you are dangerous. The safest thing to be is obedient, quiet, faceless, and even that is no guarantee. Witchcraft is always lurking. You are accused of it not because you hexed a cow, but because you made someone uncomfortable. You healed too many people. You made too much bread. You said no. You said yes. You buried 3 husbands. You buried none. The bar is so low it's underground, and you still trip over it. You can be tried, tortured, and burned for crimes no one can define. If the village floods, it's your fault. If the crops fail, your fault. If a man has dreams he doesn't understand, your fault. You are a scapegoat, wrapped in homespun cloth and expectations. Marriage is not companionship. It is economic alliance. You are chosen for your womb, your dowry, and your silence. Love is not expected. Respect is not guaranteed. Survival is uncertain. If your husband dies, you may inherit the farm, but only until a man with a closer claim appears, which he always does. If you never marry, you are pitied, feared, or mocked. You become an aunt, a servant, or a suspicion. There is no script for your happiness, only for your use. If you are noble, your life is cushioned by wealth and corsetry. You are educated, ornamented, and confined. You are a bargaining chip, traded for land and loyalty. You write poems about birds. You embroider scenes of saints. You host dinners for men who discuss politics while you refill their wine. You smile. You age. You disappear. If you are a nun, you escape one prison for another. You exchange patriarchy for poverty, silence for structure. It is not freedom, but at least it is predictable. Your sisters wear the same robes. They share the same fate. You chant. You pray. You wait for death with a little more dignity. If you are lucky, your name is remembered. Not for your thoughts, not for your inventions, but for how well you suffered. Saints are made of agony, not accomplishment. You die young, you die old, you die in childbirth, in war, in rumor, in fire. You die unknown, or too well known. Either way, you die. And then men write stories about you. They call you virtuous, or dangerous, or divine. They build cathedrals with your face on a window. They forget what you sounded like. You are history's footnote, its cautionary tale, its decorative tragedy. And if you are a woman in the Middle Ages, that's the best outcome you can hope for. It is midnight, or so you assume. You have no clock. Time is measured by the absence of light and the presence of pain. Your body tells you the day is over. Your mind suspects otherwise. There is no celebration, no sense of completion, no inner voice whispering that you've achieved something, because you haven't. You've simply endured, and that is the most anyone can expect from a full day in the Middle Ages. You lie in bed, if a pile of straw and regret can be called a bed, and reflect on everything you've done in the past 24 hours. You woke up in darkness. You dressed in filth. You ate disappointment. You worked until your muscles frayed and your hope shriveled. You bartered. You were taxed. You were watched. You were judged. You didn't die, which is not nothing, but it's not much. Around you, others sleep, or try to. The room is filled with the sound of shallow breathing, the occasional cough, and the soft rustle of lice who have become your only reliable companions. The fire has gone out. The air is cold and thick. Somewhere outside, an animal screams. You choose not to think about it. You have no energy left for other people's emergencies. Your own are enough. You stare into the blackness. It stares back. You wonder what would happen if you didn't wake up tomorrow. The answer is simple. The work would continue. Someone else would wear your shoes. Someone else would inherit your debts. The cycle would tighten around someone else's throat. History does not pause for individuals. It grinds them into the margins. If you are lucky, someone will mention your name when discussing who used to live in the hut near the ditch with the lopsided roof. If you are not, you will vanish completely, like the woman who fetched water and never came back, or the boy who coughed through winter and stopped one morning without a sound. You close your eyes, not because you're comfortable, but because you've memorized the ceiling. You know every beam, every crack, every spider that hangs in defiance of your existence. Your body aches in places you can no longer identify individually. Pain has merged into a general presence, like a second soul, heavier and less forgiving. You try to sleep. You fail. The straw itches. Your leg twitches. Your stomach growls even though you fed it hours ago. It is never satisfied. Neither is the world. You shift again. You remember a time when you thought life might be more than this. You were young, naive. You heard stories of saints, of kings, of fortunes. You thought maybe, just maybe, if you worked hard enough, someone would notice. They didn't. They never do. The stories were written by people with full bellies and dry feet. Your story is not written because you can't write. And no one wants to read about you anyway. There is no miracle waiting, no twist ending, no sudden elevation to nobility, sainthood, or literacy. You are not special, and neither was anyone else who came before you. The system works because you believe it might change. It won't, but you believe it anyway, because the alternative is madness, or honesty, which is worse. You think of tomorrow. You already know what it looks like. It looks like today, but colder, wetter, slightly more disappointing. You will rise before the sun. You will dress in the same clothes. You will eat the same meal. You will hear the same rooster. You will feel the same bone-deep exhaustion by noon. You will smile when appropriate. You will pray when told. You will work until something breaks. Then you will repair it. Then you will break, and someone else will repair you. Or not. You reach for the cloth blanket that doesn't cover your feet. You pull it higher. It slides back down. You sigh, quietly. You've already used your one emotional outburst this week, when the goat kicked over the stew pot. There are rules, even for grief. You remember the face of the steward, the way he looked at you when you handed over your last bag of grain, like he was doing you a favor, like poverty was a choice. You remember the priest, his soft hands, his hard words, his warnings about pride, pleasure, and unwashed thoughts. You remember the tax collector, the way he smelled like wine and self-satisfaction. You remember the silence when you asked for help. You remember the laughter when you fell. You remember everything, because forgetting is not allowed. You hold on to memories like they're currency, even though they're not. Not here. Not now. The night stretches endlessly. The sky outside is clear, filled with stars you can't see because the shutters are closed and your eyes are too tired to believe in beauty. You hear a rat scurry. It doesn't bother you anymore. Nothing does. Not really. You've been desensitized by necessity. Survival has stripped you down to the basics. Food, warmth, silence, permission. Anything else is dangerous. Or expensive. Or both. You pull your knees to your chest. You try to ignore the smell of old wool and human fatigue. Someone shifts beside you. Someone mumbles. You recognize the voice. It's the child. The one who didn't eat today. You promised tomorrow would be better. You lied. But only because lying is sometimes kinder than the truth. You close your eyes again. This time, sleep takes you. Not gently, not kindly, but with the blunt force of exhaustion. It drags you down like a stone in a slow-moving river. It does not restore you. It pauses you. That is all. You have made it through one day, one full medieval day, and that is something. Not a triumph, not a transformation, just a fact. You are still here, breathing, sore, hungry, a little smaller on the inside. Congratulations. You made it. Barely.